Discover the incredible Trojan War. 10 surprising lessons of love, betrayal, and transformation. Rain pelted the old roof above Sarah's head, blending seamlessly with the distant hum of cicadas as she rummaged through her late grandmother's attic. Dust motes danced in the dim light, and with each piece of forgotten memorabilia, Sarah felt the weight of her own life pressing down. As a passionate history teacher in Elmwood, she had dedicated her life to igniting a spark in her students. Yet, in a town where practicality reigned supreme, her fervent ideals often rendered her a misfit. Her colleagues spoke in the sterile tongue of STEM subjects, convincing students to pursue careers that promised financial stability while neglecting the myriad stories that richened the human experience. While clearing away cobwebs, her fingers brushed against a leather-bound journal, its surface cracked with age. Intrigued, she opened it gingerly, revealing the vivid accounts of her ancestor, a soldier embroiled in the Trojan War. Each passage spoke of loyalty and deception, love blossoming against the backdrop of chaos and valor. Sarah's pulse quickened as tales unfolded, drawing parallels to her own battle within the academic walls of Elmwood High, where standardized testing reigned supreme over exploration. Yet, with every word she turned, the thrill of discovery intertwined with dread. Mr. Thompson, the school board chair, notoriously dismissed history as archaic, a mere distraction from progress. Sarah feared that her deepening connection to her ancestors' trials might serve as an unsought burden, leading her further into isolation among peers who couldn't see beyond their rigid curricula. Should she lock away the stories that ignited her imagination, or share them, risking the very foundation of her career? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the pressure mounted, Sarah spent her evenings hunched over the journal, the weight of her desires clashing with the judgment she anticipated from the school board. How could she convey the modern relevance of ancient narratives without becoming another target of ridicule? With each heartbeat, she felt the stakes of her passion rise. Was she simply holding onto a dream in an unforgiving world? Driven by a mixture of desperation and determination, she began to devise an interdisciplinary project, envisioning deep discussions where her students could explore themes resonant in both the ancient and contemporary world. But doubt crept in, gnawing at her resolve. Would her students, who craved stories larger than life, truly appreciate the lessons hidden within those pages? Soon, whispers of dissent were wafting through the faculty lounge, chills crawling down her spine at the dismissive looks shot her way. Would Mr. Thompson label her teaching as a nostalgia trip? The thought of standing before the board, advocating for the value of human stories over numbers, sent knots into her stomach. Was she an impetuous dreamer risking everything? In this storm of uncertainty, Sarah found herself rushing headlong toward a critical juncture, the weight of her ancestor's voice resonating louder each day. As the board meeting approached, tensions swelled. What would she choose? To honor the past, embracing the stories begging to breathe anew, or to conceal her truth behind an office door, bound by the expectations of a community that saw only numbers? The answer lay just out of reach, an invisible tether holding her back in that moment. Caught between ambition and fear, Sarah was set to confront not just the board, but herself. The echo of history loomed closer than ever as the future of her students and her place within the town hung precariously in the balance. The day of the school board meeting had arrived, heavy with gray clouds that mirrored Sarah's tangled emotions. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, her reflection illuminated by the harsh fluorescent light. Hair pulled back into a tight bun, her fingers trembled as they gripped the edges of the sink. She was delivering the culmination of her thoughts, resolve fighting an uphill battle against gnawing insignificance. What were the chances that an audience comprised of calculating professionals would be moved by tales steeped in ancient history? Each breath felt weighted by expectations, Yet the words of her ancestor from the journal pulsed in her mind, compelling her forward. Suddenly, they were not just echoes of the past. They morphed into a clarion call, urging her to advocate for the human experience that had shaped generations. As Sarah arrived at the school, the usual sounds of bustling students faded from her awareness, and a solemn silence washed over her. She spotted Mr. Thompson already seated at the head of the table, an impressive figure carved from authority. The sight sent a wave of uncertainty crashing over her, but she inhaled deeply, recalling the valiance of those Trojan War soldiers. This was her battlefield. Entering the meeting room, she noted the expectant gazes of her peers, teachers of science and mathematics who prioritized grades and scores. But amidst the predictable expressions of skepticism lay a flicker of intrigue in the eyes of her supportive colleague, Ms. Jenkins, who had a penchant for the arts. That flicker lent Sarah strength, just as the fresh scent of the rain swept through the open windows, invigorating her resolve as she presented her project proposal. Sarah utilized her ancestor-esque stories to frame her arguments. She invoked themes of loyalty and betrayal, recounting how the lessons from thousands of years ago remained relevant today. Listening to herself speak, she could feel a shift in energy, a slow rewiring of initial dismissal into contemplation. Here were roots of human experience, universal truths intertwined with her students' modern dilemmas. Yet, as she reached the pivotal point of her presentation, Mr. Thompson interrupted, his brow furrowed. With all due respect, Sarah, how do you intend to quantify these lessons against the benchmarks we must achieve? Our priority is to prepare students for the workforce, not to indulge in glorified historical fantasies. His words sliced through her momentum, inciting a storm within. Unsettled, Sarah gripped the edge of the table, forcing down the anger. This was not merely an academic debate. It was her identity at stake. Could knowledge about history build bridges where numbers could not? Mr. Thompson, I disagree, she said, her voice gaining strength. While we must prepare students for the future, we must also teach them why they strive for it. Life isn't lived in statistics. It's the stories that shape who we are. The Trojan War teaches us about the complexity of human relationships, lessons on betrayal and loyalty that resonate today, in a world requiring emotional intelligence as much as intellect. Whispers of discontent swirled around the room. As she let her words settle, Sarah's heart surged. She wasn't merely arguing. She was laying bare her passion. In that moment, a realization struck her like thunder. She didn't need to convince every single person present. She needed to reach someone. Silence engulfed the room, pregnant with tension. Her heartbeat pounding in her ears, as if the ancient warriors themselves were rallying behind her. Seconds stretched into eternity. Would this be a moment of transformation, both personally and professionally, or merely another setback? With their faces turned toward her, Sarah felt intuition tugging her. This moment was her own Trojan horse, carved of courage and authenticity. She would expose her vulnerabilities, let her passion intimidate and prevail. Maybe I'm an idealist, she continued, emboldened by the quiet. But isn't that what true education should be about? Just as the energy began to shift, the door creaked open, and in walked a new board member, someone Sarah had yet to meet or gauge. The air turned electric with uncertainty, and as hope warred with trepidation, Sarah knew the tides of her future rested on the precipice of that unexpected intrusion. The tension in the room shifted palpably as the door swung open. A tall figure stepped inside, followed by a whirl of energy that seemed to electrify the air. The newcomer, clad in a crisp blue blazer, exuded confidence, his sharp jawline framed by tousled dark hair. For a fleeting moment, Sarah found herself more intrigued by him than the potential judgment that loomed. He had a way about him that drew attention, a magnetic presence that commanded silence. "Can I help you?" Mr. Thompson asked, irritation simmering just beneath his professional veneer. The newcomer flashed a charming smile, extending a hand. "I'm Alex Carter, the new board member. I apologize for interrupting. I was eager to see what is happening in here." With a subtle nod, Mr. Thompson gestured for Alex to take a seat, and the room's atmosphere shifted once again, as though the tides were turning. Sarah took a steadying breath, dismissing the sensation of falling into the background. She recognized this moment as her own, one that could surge her audience forward or backward. Despite the uncertainty in the room, her instincts told her that her voice was still the beacon in the darkness. Sarah was just about to present her proposal. Ms. Jenkins interjected warmly, her eyes flickering with support. Alex turned his attention to Sarah, interest piqued. "Your proposal? What's it about?" Her words crashed against the expected barriers. Sarah seized the moment, launching into her argument once again. She spoke passionately about the importance of stories, about the unforeseen consequences of choices, and how ancient history wasn't merely the past but a mirror reflecting timeless lessons. The room slowly shifted. Even Mr. Thompson's brows relaxed in curiosity rather than contempt. Alex absorbed every word, leaning in slightly, as though seeking to unravel a mystery. Sarah couldn't help but notice the way he processed her ideas, the spark of intrigue igniting in his emerald green eyes. This wasn't just another gauntlet to run. It was a person willing to engage, to contemplate. Just as she reached the saga of Achilles, facing his own vulnerabilities, Sarah's voice wavered. A slight crack exposed her inner self-doubts. No matter how many times she rehearsed this, she still felt like an imposter battling against giants of convention. "I want to give my students the tools to navigate their emotions and relationships. The world today demands more than rote memorization. It begs for wisdom derived from experiences." Her voice steadied, and she met Alex's gaze, a surge of determination flooding her. To understand history is to understand ourselves. A palpable silence lingered, and the gravity of her plea hung in the air. Sarah chose to challenge not just the room, but the very foundations of their perspectives. "Please consider," she urged, "how education can transcend exams and charts. We must nurture thinkers, dreamers, and ultimately, individuals who can craft their narratives." As she concluded, the silence broke. Mr. Thompson remained stoic, but Sarah caught a slight nod from him, as if perhaps her words had burrowed deeper than she anticipated. Alex's face lit up with intrigue, and he leaned forward. "Why not fuse it into the curriculum? Use measurable outcomes to enhance the emotional learning aspect. Could be groundbreaking." Sarah blinked, surprised at the unexpected allyship. While she believed in the intrinsic value of her proposal, Alex's practical suggestions could potentially bridge the gap of skepticism that had momentarily dimmed her fight. She stuttered, scrambling to grasp his implied support. "That could work, but it'll require more planning and resources than the budget allows." "Then let us advocate for it together," he suggested, eyes glimmering with enthusiasm that echoed her own burgeoning sense of agency. The potential for collaboration ignited Sarah's resolve. Perhaps this moment could redefine her trajectory, steering her beyond mere survival in academia. Yet, in the depths of her mind lingered the specter of doubt. What if an alliance came with compromise that diluted her vision? As discussions progressed, Sarah felt the push and pull of ambition reforming her path. She had stepped forward, and now she was on the cusp of a partnership that could reshape not just her professional identity, but the legacy of her teaching. But as Mr. Thompson visibly shifted in his seat, his insistent glare a mix of disapproval and scrutiny, she realized the battle was far from over. Would she be alert enough to navigate these waters without losing sight of her core principles? With that question resonating in her mind, Sarah straightened her spine. This was her moment, not just for herself, but for every student who deserved to find their narrative amid the noise. The next challenge loomed before her. A confrontation she could feel brewing. It was a war of intellect, ideals, and possibly a battle for the very soul of education itself. Would she prevail? The discussion that followed Sarah's initial presentation unfolded with an energy she had long sought in academic circles. Conversations flowed freely, ideas sparking in the dim light of the conference room. Alex's suggestions challenged the conventions she once thought immovable, tantalizing her with the promise of transformation. Every inclination that the proposal could thrive took root in Sarah's mind, but doubt, a familiar specter, whispered reminders of the hesitations that had haunted her for years. As the dialogue continued, Sarah felt that she was riding a wave, yet the thought of navigating rocky waters loomed heavily. Mr. Thompson's presence was a constant reminder of the impending confrontation. His rigid posture and thin lips seemed to tighten as Alex offered further insights, laced with a confidence she envied. "Can you quantify that emotional impact?" Mr. Thompson interjected sharply, a challenge lurking behind his question that eluded even Alex's upbeat demeanor. "Without data, any claims are just wishful thinking." The breath momentarily caught in Sarah's throat. Data. The very word tasted bitter, a reminder of her initial struggle to align her vision with standardized metrics. Yet deep down, a fire ignited. This was precisely the point. "I believe this is the direction we must explore," she interjected, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let us not be bound by current definitions of success. Emotional learning is complex and deserves creative metrics." The room quieted, and for a moment, Sarah caught Alex's approving nod, grounding her in her purpose. It was a small gesture, but it amplified the resolve in her. She envisioned crafting a hybrid educational model, one that measured students' engagement with the material alongside traditional assessments. Mr. Thompson's brow furrowed, but his gaze flickered uncertainly. This wasn't the usual battle. A realization flickered in Sarah. Perhaps every response in this room was part of an evolution, including her own. Was she finally starting to confront her fears, her long-held belief that she needed to conform? The meeting dragged on, each exchange peppered with tension and revelation. Ideas shifted, but it was not just the proposal that morphed. Sarah too began to redefine her self-concept. The validation from Alex, along with the growing camaraderie of supportive colleagues, fortified her spirit. As discussions turned heated, she amplified her thoughts, challenging complacency. Yet the shadows of doubt crept back in, highlighting her fear of failure. What if they did pressure her down a path she would regret? After several exhausting back and forths, Sarah felt the weight of those uncertainties fold in on her again, but the momentum continued. Her heartbeat quickened as she strategically reframed her approach, directly targeting Mr. Thompson's concerns. "Think about the long-term effects of helping students develop critical thinking," she insisted, her voice rising with passion. "They will approach complex problems far beyond standardized tests." "Isn't that the ultimate aim of education?" Mr. Thompson scoffed, but there was a flicker of intrigue beneath his steely exterior. "You sound very sure, Sarah. But this will require significant buy-in from the board." Buy-in. The word sent a shiver down her spine. Would she have to market her vision, dilute it to gain approval? The question loomed like a storm cloud gathering in her mind. Before her imagination could spiral off into a vortex of anxiety, Alex's parting words snapped her from her reverie. "Let us focus on creating a mock curriculum for next year." His invitation was filled with the kind of enthusiasm that ignited every nerve ending in her. "If we frame it correctly, we can present this as a pilot program." The implications sank in. Not only was he offering tangible support, he was drawing her deeper into a her plan. But as the meeting folded into a close and everyone began to disperse, Sarah's South excitement pulsed dangerously close to trepidation. She had a burgeoning ally in Alex, yet the looming ultimatum of Mr. Thompson hung over her like a guillotine blade. Would this new alliance be the key to breathing life into her vision? Or would it ultimately suffocate her fundamental beliefs under the weight of practicality? The choice felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. Her heart raced as the meeting adjourned. She had taken a step forward, but what other sacrifices would this partnership demand? Would she leave parts of her vision behind just to fit into a prescribed mold? In that moment of uncertainty, the reality hit hard. She was on the verge of redefining the landscape of her career, but at what cost? Determined yet unsettled, she straightened her shoulders, glancing back at Alex. Tomorrow was a new day, one filled with possibilities but also challenges lurking, ready to test her resolve. Would she walk into that battlefield ready to defend her ideals, or would the pressures of conforming lead her to abandon them? The sunrise of her opportunity glimmered on the horizon, but the shadows of self-doubt were still very much alive. As morning light spilled through the blinds, Sarah took a deep breath, the remnants of last night's meeting still echoing in her mind. riding the exhilaration of newfound purpose alongside the weight of uncertainty. She refused to wallow in self-doubt. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table, fingers tapping away on her laptop as ideas sparked like fireworks in her brain. Upcoming tasks loomed larger than life, yet deep down, a new energy surged within her, a blend of ambition and trepidation. Creating a mock curriculum became more than just a task. It represented her foothold into the educational landscape she envisioned. She searched for existing programs that resonated with her goals, combining emotional intelligence with traditional metrics while nurturing creativity. The screen lit up with notes and resources, and as she scrolled, her focus sharpened. Yet, a nagging thought lingered. How much of her authentic vision could survive the scrutiny of practicalities? Midway through dissecting a potential methodology, her phone rang, a text from Alex. "Ready to brainstorm? We should meet up this afternoon to build on yesterday." Excitement fizzled through her. This was an opportunity not just to dissect the proposal into manageable pieces, but to truly collaborate with someone who resonated with her ideas and aspirations. The thought of tinkering with the curriculum alongside Alex nudged her fears slightly backward. Yet she knew she had to prepare for any lingering doubts from both him and Mr. Thompson. "Let's establish goals first. What data do we seek to highlight?" she whispered, mentally outlining objectives that could sidestep Mr. Thompson's challenges while maintaining fidelity to her vision. But could she really detach her passion from the numbers that dictated success? The clock crept closer to noon as she meticulously organized her thoughts. The self-imposed deadline created an urgency that churned her stomach, but each idea she penned down sparked a renewed determination. What if she infused student interviews into the evaluation process, gathering qualitative data through their experiences? It felt revolutionary to merge quantifiable outcomes with student voices. As the afternoon approached, she dressed meticulously, opting for an outfit she deemed more confident yet approachable. This meeting with Alex felt pivotal, a potential turning point or a fracture point. Fighting a wave of anxiety, Sarah reminded herself that this was not simply about concealing her fears. It was an avenue to strengthen her resolve. Alex was already seated at the coffee shop when she arrived, a stack of notes and a mug poised in front of him. "Great to see you." He smiled, and his enthusiasm nudged her worries aside. After a brief exchange, they dove straight into the mock curriculum. Sarah felt a flow between them, ideas shifting seamlessly, and for the first time, when someone raised a valid concern, instead of retreating, she stood firm. "We cannot rely solely on standardized assessments. The richness of learning goes beyond metrics." But just as their concepts began crystallizing around the table, the specter of Mr. Thompson loomed large in the back of her mind. "I can't shake the feeling that he'll want us to tone everything down," Sarah confessed, a slight tremor in her voice. "What if he can't see the value?" Alex paused, his brow furrowed. "Then we need to present something he can't ignore. Let us back our vision with data and stories. It's not about diluting your ideas. It's about framing them in a way he'll appreciate." A knot tightened in Sarah's chest, the implications weighing heavily. Compromise loomed, yet so did opportunity. Would condensing her ideas into a more acceptable form dilute her vision or allow it to blossom in unexpected ways? As she pondered, the ground beneath her seemed to tremble. A realization flickered. This was about more than the proposal. It was about equipping herself with the tools to face resistance head-on. Her fingers curled around the edge of the table, resolve hardening within her. "Let us blow the roof off this," she declared, renewed fire blazing in her voice. "If we can make him see the potential impact on students, then maybe we can create a paradigm shift." The fervor of their discussions burned bright, and Sarah realized, whether it was in the boardroom or her own life, she held the power to influence outcomes. But as they drafted a plan, a lingering question gnawed at her: would her desire to incite change lead to self-definition or surrender? As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden light across their papers, Sarah felt the palpable energy rise in the air. She grasped the weight of her choices. They weren't merely about the curriculum but about her own journey toward empowerment and authenticity. The moment had come. Just as bold ideas rendered themselves tangible, A new challenge loomed on the horizon: how to present her vision without sacrificing its essence to the realities of compliance. Would her dedication stand strong, or would hesitation once again cloud her choices? A chill swept through her, and she packed her things, the dusk settling in. Tomorrow, she'd confront Mr. Thompson, an encounter that could either fortify her resolve or dismantle it altogether. The time had come to face this critical juncture. Would confidence or cunning carry her through? Sarah woke earlier than usual, the anxiety from the previous night lingering like a heavy fog. Today was the day she would reveal her curriculum proposal to Mr. Thompson. Her dreams had been filled with numbers and graphs dancing on the fringes of her awareness. But this morning, clarity cut through the haze. The way forward wasn't simply about appeasing figures. It was about embodying the spirit of change she so fiercely believed in. As she brewed her coffee, reflections of her conversation with Alex filled her mind. A paradigm shift, she had boldly stated. The phrase echoed, stirring her resolve. What good was a shift if it didn't illuminate paths for the students who would inhabit the curriculum? Each cup poured re-energized her commitment to not merely present data but to tell a story, one that could resonate with Mr. Thompson's analytical mind while still holding on to the heart of her innovative vision. Arriving at the office, the familiar bustle felt both invigorating and suffocating. She maneuvered through the hallways, half-heartedly greeting colleagues she barely acknowledged before. Anxiety seeped through her resolve, but she drew on her grounding techniques. Drawing a breath in through her nose, counting to 4, holding it for 4 counts, then exhaling slowly, the toppling waves of uncertainty receded. Seated in front of Mr. Thompson's office door, she rehearsed her pitch in her mind. She needed to highlight metrics without alienating the passion behind her ideas. This was not merely an administrative task. It was about crafting an educational experience that would ripple out into the lives of students. "Sarah, you're up," said Emma, disrupting her thoughts. Sarah stood, her muscles tense as she stepped into the office. Mr. Thompson looked up from his desk, a blend of curiosity and skepticism etched across his face. "Good to see you. Ready to present your curriculum ideas?" With her heart racing but her mind focused, she launched into her presentation. She felt her early morning preparations coalesce as she outlined the framework of her curriculum. Statistics rolled off her tongue smoothly, yet it was her anecdotal evidence, the stories of students thriving through emotional engagement, that captivated the room. Mr. Thompson leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Engaging narratives are important, Sarah, but these metrics," he interjected. "How do you intend to ensure these align with our benchmarks?" For a moment, the breath caught in her throat. She hadn't anticipated being thrust into a corner like this. Would she cave under the weight of his doubts? But then, she heard Alex's voice in her head. "Frame them in a way he'll appreciate." With renewed clarity, she responded, "Mr. Thompson, fine metrics can coexist with rich narratives. I propose integrating feedback loops, student inputs collected regularly to measure engagement and success, thus adapting our methods dynamically." His brow furrowed slightly. Rarely did anyone challenge his perspectives. The faintest hint of respect flickered in his eyes, but he quickly masked it. "That's a clever approach, but how feasible would this be with our current resources?" Sarah sensed the pivot. This was her moment to solidify her position. "I've researched schools of similar sizes successfully implementing such feedback mechanisms on minimal budgets. The value lies not in what we have but in how we utilize it." As the discussion unfolded, she felt her confidence swell. What she initially feared as confrontation transformed into a dialogue. Mr. Thompson remained pragmatic, with an air of caution, but she sensed an opening. He wasn't merely focusing on compliance. There was a sliver of interest in the implications her ideas could bring. But with every step forward came the awareness of her vulnerabilities. Would this narrowed path lead to acceptance, to the implementation of her vision? Or was she merely dancing around another compromise that would leave her dreams stifled? "Impressive points, Sarah," Mr. Thompson finally said, the tension in the air shifting. "I'll need time to consider the practicality of your proposal. Can we reconvene next week?" As she left his office, elation pulsed through her body, but so did trepidation. She had managed to spark a dialogue, but her ideas still hung in the balance. The potential for approval hinged not just on Mr. Thompson's deliberation but on her ability to defend her passions against reluctance as she closed her office door behind her. The weight of uncertainty still pressed against her, and a new thought emerged: what would it take to truly commit to her vision without compromising its essence? She gazed out the window at the sprawling city below, alive and ever-changing, mirroring her own journey. The painful tension of waiting for Mr. Thompson's response loomed large. But what if she could take further steps in the interim? What if actively engaging with the faculty and students could strengthen her resolve even more? Tomorrow, she'd need to find out just how her peers resonated with her ideas. This could be the catalyst to propel her vision forward or redirect her entirely. The crossroads seemed to multiply, and now Sarah carefully considered her next move, knowing that every choice carried the weight of her aspirations. Would she emerge as the architect of change? Or could she stumble and lose the ground she had fought so fiercely to gain? The next morning arrived with a sense of urgency, the sun pouring through her window as if illuminating the path ahead. Sarah awoke with a resolved mindset. The mere anticipation of Mr. Thompson's feedback was quickly morphing into a determination to fortify her proposal further. Each moment felt distinct, a foundation being laid for something much greater than her own ambitions. Over breakfast, she scrolled through her emails, searching for any sign of interest or feedback from colleagues. Each unread message held potential, and it made her heart race. The lack of noise from Mr. Thompson was deafening. Instead of letting it weigh her down, she decided to take control of the situation. Sarah could not pin her hopes solely on one meeting. It was time to actively cultivate support. She grabbed her notebook and created a list of all the faculty members who might be interested in her ideas. As names filled the page, she became introspective. Each name represented not just a potential ally but also a reflection of her own fears and aspirations. What if they dismissed her proposals? The thought ignited a nervous spark, one she needed to quell. Gathering her courage, Sarah resolved to schedule informal meetings with some of her colleagues. It wouldn't be about changing minds outright but rather planting seeds, sharing ideas, listening to concerns, and getting feedback. Maybe they shared the same struggles with the existing curriculum. Perhaps they too longed for a change. This collaborative approach could create an atmosphere of solidarity and mutual support. She would use these discussions to refine her vision, making it more robust. The first meeting was set for mid-morning with Julia, a fellow educator known for her innovative classroom practices. As Sarah approached Julia's classroom, dread flitted briefly through her mind. Curling up in that corner fearing failure was not an option any longer. She knocked softly, entering to find Julia surrounded by colorful bulletin boards and enthusiastic students. A bathroom break turned into a perfect opportunity for their conversation. After introductions, Sarah wasted little time diving into her proposal. Julia listened intently, nodding occasionally, her eyes bright with curiosity. Sarah's confidence grew as she articulated the potential impact of her curriculum, emphasizing the student feedback loops as a means not only for assessment but for empowerment. "You're really onto something, Sarah," Julia said, a smile crossing her face. "It's always felt like we tread lightly around what the students actually want to learn. It's refreshing to see a proposal that puts their voices first." Encouraged by Julia's enthusiasm, Sarah shared her anxieties about Mr. Thompson's hesitance and the need for alignment with existing benchmarks. Julia's response was immediate and supportive. "If he's skeptical, arm yourself with anecdotal successes," she suggested. "Get examples from other institutions, and provide a student testimonial if you can. Numbers can only go so far." The conversation shifted gears as they brainstormed strategies together. Slowly, Sarah felt her ideas becoming more tangible, each connection made bolstering her proposal with newfound substance. By the end of their meeting, Sarah left Julia's classroom buzzing with inspiration and a clearer vision. As lunch approached, she decided to approach a broader group, putting together a casual gathering where interested faculty could collaborate. Each share of her proposal could create a ripple effect, influencing not just her future but revitalizing the educational structure around her. By day's end, Sarah felt liberated. Wielding the power of engagement, the very change she craved was beginning to flourish. But amidst her triumph came the reflective doubt. What if her approach inadvertently turned some away? The stakes felt astronomical. Failure was not merely personal but professional. As she packed her bag, the weight of expectations settled on her shoulders. What if this would all lead to an unforeseen backlash? The question nagged at her. The journey had only just begun, and she could not shake the feeling of walking a tightrope between ambition and despair. Determined not to falter, Sarah reminded herself of the transformative power of collaboration. Tomorrow was not simply another day, it would be the starting point for something distinctive. She would expand her network, embracing risks. Yet, uncertainty still lingered, fueling her resolve. In the early hours of the next day, as she mulled over her next steps, a notification ping interrupted her thoughts. A new collaboration request from one of the faculty members she hadn't anticipated reached her inbox. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, she clicked it open. What awaited her might change everything. Would this new opportunity enhance her crusade for educational reform, or would it bring uncharted challenges? One thing was clear. The path ahead was rife with possibilities, each twist promising to challenge her conviction in unexpected ways. The ping from her inbox seemed to echo in the stillness of the room, amplifying Sarah's anticipation into palpable tension. She opened the email, her heart racing as the screen revealed a message from Mark, a mid-level administrator known for his ability to navigate institutional politics with ease. Hi Sarah, I'd love to discuss some of your ideas further. Can we meet? The invitation struck Sarah as both an opportunity and a potential challenge. Mark had a reputation for being a skeptic, but he was also well respected among the administration. Engaging with him might lend legitimacy to her proposal. However, the thought of presenting her vision to someone so entrenched in the system triggered an avalanche of self-doubt. Was she ready to face his probing questions, or would she falter under the weight of expectation? After a contemplative moment, she quickly responded, setting a time for that afternoon. As she closed her laptop, Sarah felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in her chest. What if her passion wasn't enough? What if he dismissed her ideas? Yet, beneath the trepidation lay a growing sense of resolve. This was her moment to shine. Surrounded by the familiar chaos of her morning routine, Sarah tried to focus. She would prepare by revisiting her notes, honing her argument and arming herself with anecdotes from Julia's suggestions. Each paragraph refined and each statistic vetted became an act of empowerment, bolstering her belief that change could occur if not here, then somewhere. As she arrived at Mark's office, she was greeted by the sight of shelves lined with educational literature, a familiar comfort amidst the tension she felt. Still, the tension persisted. Mark sat behind a massive desk, flipping through papers with a meticulous air that left little room for mistakes. Taking a breath to center herself, she stepped forward, determined not to appear intimidated. "Thanks for meeting with me," she began, attempting to sound confident and at ease. Mark looked up, removed his glasses and nodded slowly. "I've heard whispers about your proposal, Sarah. Let us hear it." As Sarah launched into her pitch, she watched Mark's expression closely. He leaned back, fingers steepled, his demeanor inscrutable. She spoke about the importance of student voices, the ability to adapt curricula that aligned with real-world applications, and the need for innovative feedback loops that engage students actively in their learning experiences. For every point Sarah made, Mark interjected with questions that sliced through her narrative, each query pushing her to clarify her intentions and rationale. "Have you considered how your idea aligns with the educational benchmarks? What evidence supports your claims?" Each question felt like a challenge, but as she responded, she felt elements of conviction solidifying within her. "You're addressing a significant gap in our current approach," he acknowledged eventually, flipping through pages of notes. "But you understand that institutional change is often fraught with resistance. Are you prepared for that?" Sarah's mind raced. She had not fully embraced the ramifications of resistance. Self-doubt lurked in the shadows, allowing questions to murmur in the back of her mind. But she had come this far. "I believe in the need for change," she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "I believe in the impact it can have on our students." Mark paused, seemingly considering her words. The discussion shifted toward logistical nuances and blueprint considerations. With each moment, Sarah began to feel a shift within herself. This was not simply a pitch. It was a growing belief that she was equipped to influence her environment. Leaving the meeting, though the uncertainty still hummed in her mind, there was an undeniable spark of empowerment ignited by the confrontation. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, challenged her own limits, and illustrated her commitment. As she walked back down the hall, a thought settled in her mind. If she could face Mark's queries, surely she could confront anyone who might resist her. Yet, even as excitement bubbled within her, she knew more awaited. The impending meeting with Mr. Thompson loomed ahead, and she would need to prepare more strategically. That evening, as twilight began to paint the sky, another email notification drew her attention. This time, it wasn't a colleague. It was Mr. Thompson himself, requesting a meeting to discuss her proposal. Her breath caught in her throat. The pivotal moment had arrived, and the stakes now felt higher than ever. Would this meeting validate her efforts so far, or would it expose the cracks in her resolve? The anticipation of the upcoming confrontation electrified her thoughts, setting the stage for a showdown that could either elevate her vision or dismantle it entirely. In the dim glow of her living room, Sarah stared at the email from Mr. Thompson, her pulse quickening with each passing moment. The stakes felt infinitely more formidable than her earlier encounter with Mark. As head of the department, Mr. Thompson held an immense sphere of influence, and his approval or disapproval could either catapult her proposal into the limelight or bury it under institutional inertia. The scene replayed over and over in her mind, the mental rehearsal transforming into a chaotic swirl of thoughts that threatened to suffocate her enthusiasm. Anxiety roared in her ears, whispering reminders of failures past, and the bitter taste of inadequacy that sometimes lingered. Yet within the turmoil, a quiet assertiveness bubbled up, urging her to confront her fears directly. She knew she had to prepare diligently. With renewed determination, Sarah switched her attention to an array of data and research she had been accumulating. Each statistic was not merely a number but a narrative, a means to validate her vision. The room filled with the clack of her keyboard as she crafted a compelling narrative, one that integrated both emotional implications and hard facts. As the hours ticked by, Sarah constructed multiple scenarios for the upcoming meeting, visualizing every detail. She anticipated Mr. Thompson's questions, his concerns regarding implementation, and the possible pushback she might face. Would he be skeptical, dismissive, or surprisingly receptive? Experiencing a mix of dread and anticipation, she began to unlock her imagination, disentangling the threads of her proposal into clear, vivid points of discussion. The night deepened, shadows creeping into the corners of her living room, mirroring the claustrophobic feelings that threatened to engulf her spirit. Every time she envisioned Mr. Thompson's expression stoic, judging, she felt her resolve waver. But every new statistic she reviewed illuminated the possibility of success and propelled her forward. In the quiet hours of the early morning, Sarah wrapped herself in a cocoon of determination. She turned to her dog, who had been faithfully keeping her company. "We've got this, right?" she mused, getting a wag of affirmation in return. It was a moment grounding her, reminding her of the passion that had ignited her journey thus far. The day of the meeting dawned bright, laden with a nervous energy. As she dressed, Sarah scrutinized her reflection, searching for that confidence she so desperately sought. She adjusted her blazer, a little too professional but empowering nonetheless. A final glance in the mirror produced a subtle nod. She might not have all the answers, but she had a vision worth fighting for. Arriving at the building, her heart raced as she stepped through the familiar doors. The environment buzzed with the typical morning activity. Conversations flowed, but all she could hear was the rhythmic beat of her own breath. The weight of her ambitions pressed firmly against her resolve, yet she maintained a composed presence as she navigated the corridors toward Mr. Thompson's office. Knocking softly, she entered to find him seated behind his desk, exuding an air of authority that made her heartbeat quicken. "Sarah," he greeted, his tone steady but neutral. A flicker of a smirk crossed his lips, a reminder she would have to shoulder every ounce of scrutiny he might unleash. "Thank you for this opportunity," she began, her voice steady despite the tumult within. As she delved into her carefully crafted presentation, Sarah could feel the energy shift. She outlined her key points, allowing her passion to shine through the intricacies of her data and insights. But then, the floor fell out from beneath her when Mr. Thompson interrupted with a carefully measured question. Tell me, what makes you believe the administration will accept such drastic changes? We've had proposals like yours before, and each has failed to gain traction. The moment lingered, heavy and charged. Sarah felt the ground beneath her quiver, but instead of retreating into herself, she anchored her thoughts with the reflections from her meeting with Mark. It's about the impact we can have on our students, she replied, her voice gaining strength. Ignoring the gap in their educational experience isn't an option. We can't afford to remain stagnant when every failing child is a testament to our lack of action. She watched as Mr. Thompson leaned forward, fingers steepled, the glimmer of intrigue intertwining with skepticism in his gaze. This was a confrontation, a moment suspended in time where her fate could shift significantly. What would he say next? Would he challenge her more? Or just maybe would he see the potential? As anticipation hung heavy in the air, Sarah steeled herself, preparing for whatever was to come. The tension in Mr. Thompson's office towered above both Sarah and her proposal, a tempest fueled by doubt and possibility. She rehearsed her next words, channeling the fervor she'd nurtured through sleepless nights spent drafting, revising, and passionately believing in her vision. Her heartbeat echoing in a steady rhythm, she mustered the courage to face Mr. Thompson's critical gaze. Imagine a curriculum where students actively engage in dialogues that shape their understanding of the world around them, she urged, her voice resonant with intent. We can prioritize not only their intellect but also their emotional intelligence, preparing them for the complexities of life beyond these walls. The brief silence that followed felt electrifying. A flicker of interest flashed in Mr. Thompson's eyes, just a hint. But it was there. What metrics do you suggest we use? The challenge lay before her, cutting yet familiar. By integrating qualitative student feedback with traditional assessments, our students can report their engagement and growth, establishing real connections with the content. The clarity of her answer surprised even her. This isn't merely an abstract idea. It's about achieving measurable outcomes through emotional connections, genuine learning experiences. Mr. Thompson remained silent, but his furrowed brow suggested contemplation rather than dismissal. They both knew the stakes, and raising the bar on what defined educational success felt monumental. Every successive second felt like a small eternity. Let us say, he paused, you get buy-in from the faculty. What plans would you have to ensure consistency in teachings? Collaboration. Sarah responded immediately, the answer flowing as her excitement mounted. Implementation committees among faculty members to pilot these initiatives and share insights. Their buy-in will foster a sense of ownership and accountability to see this through. Every question he tossed back became a stepping stone, each one reinforcing her resolve. Sarah began weaving anecdotes about former students whose lives lacked the emotional literacy they would benefit from in the proposed curriculum. She painted vivid pictures not just of data trends and averages, but of the everyday struggles her students faced, struggles that history, through its rich emotional landscape, could address. With each point articulated, she saw the shift happening. Mr. Thompson's stern demeanor softened slightly, and for the first time, he was meeting her gaze fully. Sarah, I have to admit, he said, leaning back in his chair, that your passion is compelling. However, this is all contingent on the data you can present to justify such deviations from our typical practices. How will you track students' emotional growth? The pressure swelled once more, but something abstract yet palpable flickered in the air. Clarity filled Sarah, crystallizing her thoughts into a tangible approach. What if we frame emotional growth as a vital skill for succeeding in college and careers? She leaned in slightly, her focus razor-sharp. We could introduce assessments to gauge self-awareness and interpersonal skills, tracking these alongside academic achievements in real time. For a moment, Mr. Thompson considered this, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. In that moment of shared silence, Sarah suddenly realized the previous barrier of doubt she had faced, once insurmountable, was beginning to dissolve. Let us see it, he finally said, his voice steadying. Draft a detailed proposal with metrics and expected outcomes you can demonstrate. Bring it to the next board meeting. Sarah's heart surged. The hard-won victory felt almost surreal. Thank you, she breathed, her voice steady but eager. I appreciate the opportunity. As she left Mr. Thompson's office, a kaleidoscope of emotions surged through her. Excitement, relief, triumph, every step felt lighter, each breath deeper. She had not only conveyed her vision, she had expanded it, allowing her professional identity to unfold with clarity and strength. Moments before she exited the school grounds, an unexpected wave washed over her. She found herself doing what she had long wanted, developing a framework for a new way of educating. No longer was she merely existing within the corridors of institutional walls. She was transforming them. Success was not an item on a checklist but layered with every connection she made with colleagues and students alike in the coming weeks. Each shared anecdote from students who felt seen and validated by changing the curriculum added to the mosaic she was assembling. The greatest victory was not just in the acceptance of her proposal, but in the renewed zest she felt coursing through her veins. Sarah had become an advocate not just for change in the classroom but for embracing a new kind of education that honored humanity, emotion, and connection. And most importantly, she had proven to herself that her voice could reshape the narrative she had once found so stifling. Each stride she took, from presenting ideas to forging relationships with her colleagues, echoed with potent potential, a crescendo of growth that vibrated in her very core. Sarah was no longer just the passionate history teacher of Elmwood. She was its transformative changemaker, charged with the responsibility and exhilaration of wielding her voice as a precise instrument of progress and that defining moment of personal and professional evolution. She understood her journey wasn't complete. This was just the beginning. Now it's your turn to act. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that transform lives and redefine education. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and push these important messages to more people who need them. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and the impact of following one's passion despite obstacles. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and ignite change. Don't wait even one more second to share.